dive down the rabbit hole of politics as Pierre Poilievre delivers a speech that perfectly encapsulates the chaos in Canada right now and everything that's going on. So I'm going to give you some commentary and get in the chat. I'll pull up your comments on screen as we go through this and dig into this. I just want to first of all say, I am not like supporting the Conservatives by doing this video. And I'm going to point out things that he says that are completely incorrect. However, what I am able to identify by looking at a speech like this guy is 90% likely going to be the next prime minister, whether people like that or don't. And I think the majority of people do, in fact, like this guy. And he is saying all the right things. And he is literally coming out saying everything that Canadians are thinking and feeling right now and going through. And it's just kind of insane. So for me, this was the turning point where he absolutely destroyed Trudeau. And I saw this video today, and I just sat there for 10 minutes after thinking about everything he'd said. And it was just kind of crazy. And I thought, I've got to come on here and deliver this to you guys in case you haven't seen it. So let's get right into this.
Tour of Canada. And I was impressed by the incredible courage of Canadians who are suffering the misery that Trudeau has imposed on them. At 8 years, housing costs have doubled. The cost of living is rising. Crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder are common in our streets, and those streets are increasingly filled with homeless people stuck living in tents because of the doubling of housing costs. Now, Justin Trudeau thinks the worst problem in Canada today is that people are angry at him. I think the worst problem is that people can't pay their rent after 8 years of his inflation.
And what he's referring to there is essentially because Trudeau has nothing left to go on anymore. So has just been kind of clinging to this narrative that Pierre is just an angry guy, because a lot of his speeches, you have noticed, like, it's like he's gone through some change. He's lost the glasses. He's changed his whole demeanor. And obviously that's about coming out into the more broader public view now as leader of the Conservatives and probably the next prime minister. But it's interesting to see. He also talks about doubling of housing costs there. We'll get onto that in a bit because he was, in fact, part of the rise of that.
Policies, that is shoveling billions of dollars into the bureaucracies that block home building. Housing costs are among the worst in the world, nearly double what they are in the United States. Rent has doubled. Mortgage payments doubled. Needed down payments doubled, all after 8 years of Justin Trudeau. Yesterday, he held a press conference to announce in front of a house to tell you all that he's not responsible for housing.
And I'm sure you all probably saw that. He is, and just listen to what Pierre says. In fact, I want to interrupt it.
Funny, because 8 years ago, he promised he was going to lower housing costs. It's also funny that the biggest housing agency in Canada, CMHC, is federal. Mortgage insurance, federal. Taxes, fiscal and monetary policy, federal. Immigration, federal. Infrastructure money, federal. All these things are federal, and yet the federal prime minister claims he has nothing to do with it whatsoever. No wonder he wants to wash his hands of his horrendous and unprecedented record. After 8 years, people are losing their homes. I used to say there were 35-year-olds living in their parents' basements, and people were shocked to hear that. Now, it's much worse. The 35-year-old worries that him and his mother might be on the street living in their cars. I met a 42-year-old carpenter in Sault Ste. Marie who lives in his car. I talked to a housing advocate in...
And just think about how profound that is. Doesn't that just kind of demonstrate how fucked this country is right now? And I do not think that Pierre is going to solve all the problems that he claims he is going to solve, but he's a damn sight better option than Justin Trudeau. And given the fact that if we vote for somebody else, essentially we're just giving a vote to Trudeau, we have no choice but to throw our votes Pierre's way, but it's better than Trudeau.
Penticton, who says it's common now for her to meet seniors in that city that live in parking lots. CTV even ran a story of a nurse who lives in her van. Does anybody remember Canada like this? The scenes in our cities where there's tents, where people live on the streets and in parks, have not been this common since the Great Depression. Our refugees cloister in inner cities and under bridges. This is life after 8 years of Justin Trudeau. He's concerned that people are angry at him. I'm concerned for the little girl in Timmins who stepped on a dirty needle, or the mother in Toronto who was hit by a stray bullet. I'm concerned about the sports store owner in Timmins who had his shop robbed for the 4th time in 2 years. I'm not concerned whether or not Justin Trudeau's feelings are hurt because people are angry at him. I'm concerned about the misery that he has unleashed on our streets and in the pocketbooks of Canadians. You know, I looked today at the Journal de Montréal. I'm going to quote, "Health professionals are reportedly seeing more and more of a disease that had almost disappeared, scurvy. This disease had practically disappeared, but health professionals claim that it is due to food inflation, that this disease, dating back to the Middle Ages, is resurfacing. Quote, people are eating fewer vegetables and fruits, probably because costs have gone up," said pharmacist Régin Lemay. "Typically, by eating fruit and vegetables daily, you get enough vitamin C to avoid developing this disease."
When I heard that, again, I mean, at multiple points when I was listening to this video, I was absolutely speechless. It's just unbelievable.
People aren't getting vitamin C now after 8 years of Trudeau's inflationary deficits and taxes. And now he wants to quadruple the carbon tax from 14 to 61 cents a litre on the farmers who make the food, the truckers who ship the food, and therefore all who buy the food. This is the misery that he has unleashed, and unfortunately, it will only get worse the longer he is there. But the good news is that Canada wasn't like this before Justin Trudeau, and it won't be like this after he's gone. We'll get back to the common sense of the common people. We'll bring home lower prices by axing the carbon tax and the inflationary deficits to make food, heat, and gas more affordable. We'll bring home powerful paychecks with lower income tax that rewards hard work, with a blue seal test that will allow our brilliant immigrants to show they are qualified to work as doctors and nurses, reducing wait times. We'll green light green projects like critical minerals, hydroelectricity, and natural gas for export to the world, bringing home our jobs back to this country. We'll bring homes that people can afford, with a plan that I released, by the way, in April of 2022. Justin Trudeau says he still hasn't seen it. A plan that would incentivize cities to free up land and speed up permits so we can build, build, build. We have the fewest houses per capita of any country in the G7 with the most land to build on. The answer is to build. My plan, my common sense plan, requires cities boost the number of building permits by...
I will say one thing about his housing plan. It sounds more and more like he wants to build an economy that's even more dependent on housing, and that's just my view on that subject is
15% per year, or lose their housing or lose their infrastructure grants. But those that exceed that target will get building bonuses. I'll require every federally funded transit station have high-density housing approved all around it so our seniors and youth can live right next to the bus or train. We'll sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land to build, build, build. We'll speed up immigration of building trades skilled.
And that is actually a legitimate plan if they actually follow through on it, and depending what they actually do. If they do sell off federal land and federal buildings and they sell it off as a discount for affordable housing for Canadians, then that could work as a policy. But I doubt it would be anything like that when it really comes down to it.
Immigrants, and we'll put more emphasis on training the future tradespeople of our country. That is a common sense plan that will build the millions of homes that we need to make it affordable as it was 8 years ago when I was the housing minister. And we'll bring home safety to our streets with jail and not bail for repeat violent offenders, and with treatment, not more drugs, for those who suffer from the illness of addiction. And we'll stop dividing and censoring Canadians, bring back freedom of expression, remove internet censorship laws, and...
I'm 100% behind that, and I'm sure everybody on this channel is as well.
Treat Canadians based on their individual humanity, not their group identity. It's common sense. Common sense of the common people united for our common home. Now let's bring it home. Thank you.
Poilievre, since you mentioned immigration as part of the federal areas contributing to the housing issues, should Canada re-examine immigration targets until housing gets better?
Well, I was surprised that Justin Trudeau chose the worst immigration minister in Canadian history to be his housing minister. Sean Fraser is responsible for putting refugees under bridges and in our streets. Sean Fraser oversaw the massive human tragedy of our international student program, which has people coming here defrauded by fake educational institutions and often going back to their home country in body bags. Justin Trudeau is utterly incompetent in his immigration, and he has messed it up so badly that many immigrants are now saying they were better off in their country of origin.
And this is something that we have talked about multiple times over the past couple of weeks on videos on this channel, the phenomenon of how many immigrants want to leave, and the numbers suggest it's around 30%. And not only that, you know, think about Canadians as well, because so many Canadians want to leave as well. So many Canadians are trying to move to different provinces and move to different areas, but ultimately they're under the one power, which is the federal government.
Something I never heard in my life. There's actually an internet phenomenon now where immigrants are warning potential newcomers of how unaffordable and dangerous life is in Canada after 8 years of Justin Trudeau. My policy, my common sense policy on immigration will be driven by the number of vacancies that private sector employers want to fill, the number of charities that want to sponsor refugees, and the families that want to reunite quickly with loved ones. Let's base it on common sense, not on Justin Trudeau's ideology and incompetence, and that's how we'll restore the immigration system that has, before his arrival, been more successful than any other immigration system on earth. Thank you.
What's wrong with the 500,000 target in your mind? You call it a vanity project. What's wrong with that target?
I think what's wrong is Justin Trudeau's incompetence. So far, we've seen a totally incompetent Justin Trudeau. What will I do? I'll make sure we have housing.
And think about how that politicizes immigration as well when Justin Trudeau comes out with targets. I mean, you shouldn't have fucking immigration targets. That is just ridiculous to begin with. But when you have these immigration targets, and especially a person as arrogant, as stubborn as Justin Trudeau, obviously what's going to happen is if he's not meeting those targets, that's not going to happen. Put it this way, he's going to do everything he can to meet those targets, even if it's bringing in more refugees that put pressure on Canadian services. Because at the end of the day, Justin Trudeau is part of an elite, so he's never going to feel any of the ramifications for his actions. And that's just the pure reality of what's going on. Now, Pierre is also a politician, and he's been in politics a long time, so he is also part of that elite class. But it's just that he's more appealing when it comes to middle class voters and just the general population anyway, because of what he's saying. Like this, it's impossible, even, you know, politics aside, it's impossible not to agree with the sort of things that he's saying in these sort of speeches. And he is just absolutely destroying Trudeau, in my opinion.
And healthcare, so that when people come here, they have a roof overhead and care when they need it. When I'll make sure that it's easier for employers to fill genuine job vacancies they cannot fill. I will make sure. Furthermore, sorry, it's not a debate. You have a question, I'll give you my answer. My answer is that we will also ensure that immigrants who come here as professionals get a chance to work in their profession. After 8 years of Trudeau, there are now 20,000 immigrant doctors and 32,000 immigrant nurses that can't work in our hospitals, while we have massive waiting lines. It boils my blood to think that my little girl sits in a waiting room for hours with a headache or a migraine, when there are brilliant immigrant doctors that could be treating her, but for the fact that there's no direct way for them to take a test and prove their qualifications. That's why I proposed a Blue Seal national standard that would allow professionals to take an exam, prove they're qualified, and work anywhere in Canada. We did this in 1952 for the trades.
Set targets, Sarah. What target would you set?
We did this in the trades with the Red Seal in 1952.
And you notice how they're always interrupting and they always want to get, what's your target? What's your target? Because that's what they want to run with all the stories and say, hey, Pierre says that he's going to drop immigration 50%. And then you have to think of the voting demographics of the voters that are voting for Trudeau and how that affects them. And the predominant areas that are going to be the battlegrounds are going to be the obvious ones like Toronto, which has a lot of Liberal voters there. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But I think, quite frankly, everybody is just done and sick with Trudeau, as I'll show you in a poll after this in a second.
And it was the federal government that brought the provinces together to get it done. So that the target I would set is to get a blue seal that would allow professionals to prove their qualifications, get to work so we can improve our health care.
The Prime Minister accused the previous Conservative government, which you were a part of getting out of what he said the housing business completely. What is your response to that?
I don't even need to respond. When I was housing minister, housing cost half of what it does now. We didn't have people living in tent cities. The rent in this country is up 93%. Mortgage payments are up over 100%. The needed down payment for a home is up 100%. You know, these are the costs that Justin Trudeau has imposed. Now, he might brag that his policy is more expensive to taxpayers, but that doesn't make it a success. Failing is bad. Failing expensively is worse. We will do neither. When I'm Prime Minister, we will succeed at a lower cost to home buyers and taxpayers.
And there you go. And it is kind of crazy because if you look at this, I want to show you this. You know, he was in power right around here. So, you know, him saying that housing was much more affordable. Yes, it was half the price, but it was still expensive and most people couldn't afford it. And if you look back at headlines, then that's what it says too. The other thing that I want to show you real quick is what's happening with the polling data, because on Wikipedia here, it actually shows you how it's changing. So if you look at the lead, for example, you can see how it's all blue in the recent 2023 polls. And then you can see how it's kind of changed from 2022, where it was Trudeau who's in the lead. It's now flipping over to the Conservatives. And it's no wonder that this is really happening, considering everything that's happening right now in Canada and considering how bad things actually are. I mean, he accurately described it by saying the country is in a depression, because that's what it is in. I mean, some of the stories he told there were kind of just really, really sobering for some people, even Liberal voters who are just going to be like, what the hell? Because you know what? The crazy thing is right now, Canada is really on a collision course. And the fact is that even if Pierre gets in charge, you know, he's going to try and do all these things, but he's not going to be able to fix an already broken economy. The economy is way past the point of being able to be fixed at this point. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think he will be the next prime minister. I mean, you just have to look at his speeches, his demeanor, the way he conducts himself compared to Trudeau now. I mean, it is just obvious in my opinion. And you only have to look at the polls as well to see that he's leading as well. So it's going to be really interesting moving forward. I'm just going to see what you guys are saying in the chat. Folks get what they voted for. People are fed up with the spending. And you know what? The spending is one thing as well, because he talks a lot about that. And he kind of talks, and a lot of politicians do this. It's almost like they think we don't look at other media outside of Canada. But, you know, he's going, it's his inflationary deficits that have done this. But, you know, it was every country pretty much in the G7 that had these massive inflationary deficits during the pandemic. So for him to say, oh yeah, we would have done everything differently. Yeah, right. He would not have done anything differently. He would have had massive deficits too. He would have been doing similar support plans as Trudeau did. And we'd be in exactly the same boat as we are right now, maybe a little bit less. But the fact is, if you look around different countries, it's quite obvious that when he's on about that, he loses me completely, because I'm just like, this is just general political BS. And a lot of what they say is political BS, but some of what they say is utterly truth to the point. And that's what Pierre seems to have a knack of doing now, is just being like truthful about what's going on in Canada. And people are just waking up and agreeing with that. And I think that's just going to only continue. I mean, the economy is only going to get worse between now and the next election. And I think it's very possible that if we have an economic downturn, which looks more than likely, we're already in one, in my opinion. But when that happens, what's going to happen? I could imagine Trudeau calling an election, and then the election plays out right then. And that could also block up and hold up bills for stimulus and all kinds of different things. So it will be interesting to see. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, you might like this video here. You might also like this playlist here. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Honor to be able to do this. And I will see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, guys. Bye-bye.